What's up guys, my name is Liam, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Errennir Gecko mousepad. To me this is more of a speed mousepad, more on the slower end of the spectrum, and it really does have an incredible build. So, is this going to be the perfect gaming mousepad for you? Let's check it out. Before we get started today, I did want to let you know this was sent out to me. However, everything you'll be hearing in this videos is going to be my own words and my own opinions. This did arrive to my front door flat package in this envelope style packaging, so nice and easy to store if you wish to do so. And the dimensions of this are coming in at 500 millimeters in width by 500 millimeters in height, and it is sitting at 3.5 millimeters in thickness. This is featuring a pretty unique base from anything that I have previously used before. I'm not sure if this is some type of an alpha cell or something like that. It does have pretty different and unique properties from any other different type of alpha cell that I have used, but starting out with the back of it, it is incredibly sticky. This is probably one of the grippiest bases that I've ever used, and the overall feeling of this pad when you do take it out of the box, it's just heavy. So once you do lay this thing down flat on any surface that I used, it truly just sticks, and I even have a hard time making adjustments to it. So the stickiness of this is really great. One thing I did want to mention to you guys really quick, however, is it doesn't really bother me so much, but I do see people bring things like this up in my comments on a lot of my mousepad reviews. There is an odor to the base, and it's kind of strong. It's kind of been going away, but even after using this for I believe a couple weeks now, it still is there. So just one thing I figured I'd mention for those of you that are kind of sensitive to the odors. But when it comes to the properties of this base overall, like I mentioned, it is heavy set. It really does have incredibly quick elastic properties. Like the rebound on this is literally nearly instantaneous, and it is a little bit more on the firmer side to me. You do have some plushness there and you can push into it, but it does kind of feel somewhat similar to a rubber style base, and perhaps maybe even a little bit more firm and a little bit quicker rebound than that. But with all that being said, I really love this base and I love the properties of it. It really does feel fantastic. The stitching all the way around the edges looks like it was done incredibly well, and it does sit slightly below the surface. They do have their logo down here in the bottom right hand corner, and it is slightly raised up off of the surface. So if you were to move your mouse down in the bottom right hand corner of the mouse pad, you can feel it on the bottom of your skates. The surface is described as a fine woven plain fabric, and it does feel pretty similar to a cloth style surface, but on the actual properties of it, if you were to go across the x-axis, it feels smooth. There's literally like almost no texture there. When you do go up and down along the y-axis, there is just a slight bit of texture. One of the first things I did notice about this surface as I was taking a look at the macro shots is it does look similar in appearance to the Zowie GSR2, but even though the two surfaces do look incredibly similar to one another, I do feel like the performance is a little bit different on each of them. The Zowie GSR2 I feel like has a little bit more control. On the Gecko, once I first got this out of the box, it actually did have much more control, and it felt much more like a control pad. So there is absolutely a break-in period for the surface, and the more I started using it, the quicker it just started getting an all-around. Now it has a much quicker glide. So the one thing about the properties of having this solid, pretty firm base is with this smooth surface is you do get a really low static friction, so it's incredibly easy to make micro adjustments. And then the dynamic friction across the surface, as you can see there, it is a pretty smooth and quick glide overall. The fact that this still has the similar properties of a cloth style pad, I don't feel like it was too fast or too slippery for me. And in fact, since the base is plush and you can push into it, the more weight that you do start to apply on top of this surface, you do get a much greater sense of control and a pretty decent sense of stopping power, just depending on how hard you actually press into the surface. But truly, I'm a huge fan of speed pads, and I kind of go back and forth between like the Saturn Pro, that type of style, the Zowie GSR2, Lamzu Energon. I kind of like to stay kind of in that ballpark, and this is kind of in my realm of speed and performance all around. So it really does feel great to me in every type of game that I tried using it in. Since this fabric is a smoother and softer style feeling of fabric, I really do feel like that these skates actually have a pretty big impact on the overall performance when using this pad. One thing that's kind of shocking is on typically with normal cloth style pads, when you use these harsher style skates with color in them, especially if they're smaller, they're usually quite a bit quicker. I kind of did find that to be the opposite case in my experience on the surface. I feel like the harsher pads felt a little scratchier on this actual surface itself, and in all honesty they felt a little bit slower. As you can kind of see there, as I'm just moving that around, you can kind of see it how it comes to an abrupt stop. But when you're using the 100% virgin PTFE, the incredibly smooth skates, these are the Tiger Ice V2s, I do feel like you get a much quicker and smoother glide overall. So I do prefer using these set skates, and again, it didn't matter whether they're bigger or smaller, but I do feel like these did have a pretty significant impact through my experience when using this pad. So first off, when comparing it next to the Lethal Gaming Gear Saturn Pro, the Saturn Pro, the texture on the surface here, there is a bit more texture, and in all honesty, the Gecko, it does feel a little bit more silky and smooth to a certain degree. The performance between both of these, I feel like the overall speed of these is not that far apart from one another. It is obvious, however, that the Saturn Pro does have a greater sense of both static and dynamic friction, where with the Gecko, it does have less of the initial static friction and a little bit less of the dynamic friction. So the Gecko, without question, is definitely a step above the Saturn Pro when it comes to the overall speed and just all around having less friction. So let's go ahead and drop a glide test between the two. All right, so next up, when comparing it to the Lamzu Energon, though I would classify both of these as being really smooth to the touch feeling surfaces, I do feel like overall that the Gecko does feel a little bit closer or more similar to a cloth style pad, and I do feel like it does offer a bit more of the initial static friction and dynamic friction as well. So I do feel like you get a little bit more control and stopping power, whereas on the Energon, even though this isn't an incredibly fast speed pad, it is a little bit on the slower end of the spectrum, I do feel like the surface just feels a little bit smoother on this, and overall the performance on your glide does feel just a little bit more slippery with less dynamic and static friction. But overall, I do feel like the performance of these is pretty close, with the Energon being just a little bit faster than the Gecko. So let's go ahead and drop a glide test between both of them. All right, guys, so that about wraps things up on the Errennir Gecko. And to be completely honest with you guys, I am getting a little fatigued with doing all these different mouse pads reviews. There's just so many incredible options out there. So many things are great, and you know, they're all kind of similar but different in their own way. And in the case of this one, I really do feel like this does kind of stand out. It feels a little bit more unique from anything else that I have previously used. So all around, I feel like the build on this thing really is great. I love the base. I love the properties of it, the stickiness. It has a great size, and the performance just kind of aligns right with what I'm looking for overall in a pad. The one thing just keep in mind, however, like I said, is I do kind of feel like the skates that you use are a little sensitive on the surface, but truly once you do have a right combination with the perfect style skates with the surface, I really do think that this thing performs incredibly well. And I would definitely say that they have an absolute hit on their hands with this pad. I really do think the performance of it is great. All right, guys, so if you have any questions, please let me know down in the comments below. If you have enjoyed watching this video and you're interested in seeing more videos like this in the future, please drop this video a like and subscribe to my channel. And thank you guys so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.